Stop, sir. Can I see your base pass? Okay.
Welcome to the Bentwaters Museum's restoration facility. My name's Ian White and I'm one of the engineers. Meteor WH453 was built by the Armstrong Whitworth Company at their Coventry factory as part of a batch of 200 F Mark 8s that were ordered by the Air Ministry in August 1950. The aircraft was delivered to Air Ministry Charge in November 1951 when it was flown to number 33 maintenance unit to prepare it for service. WH453 passed to number 222 Squadron in March 1952 and to number 72 Squadron in December 1954. Following a short stay with number 60 maintenance unit, the aircraft was delivered to number 5 Civilian Anti-Aircraft Cooperation Unit on the 31st of May 1955 and remained there until June 1961, after which she was delivered to storage at number 5 Maintenance Unit. April 1972, she was sold to Flight Refuelling Limited and moved to their Tarrant Rushden factory for conversion to an unmanned U-Mark 16 target drone. During the conversion process, the aircraft's 4 20mm cannon were removed and a more pointed and extended nose was installed to hold the remote control gear. An autopilot was built into the forward part of the fuselage fuel tank, thus reducing the type's endurance, while wingtip camera pods replaced the standard tips. The U-Mark 16 could be flown conventionally by a pilot or unmanned via a radio link from the ground. When no pilot was on board, suitable ballast in the form of sandbags had to be installed to maintain stability. Infrared flares could also be attached to increase the infrared signature to match that of modern engines. When finished, the aircraft was repainted in a red and yellow scheme. The remaining U-Mark 16s were redesignated D-Mark 16 in 1988. It is believed the work on WH453 was completed by 1972 when the aircraft was issued to the Royal Aircraft Establishment at West Frew and then to Llanbedr for guided weapons trials, a role it continued until 1992 when the airframe was retired. WH453 was acquired by the Bentwaters Cold War Museum in January 2005 to begin a restoration and conversion back to a standard F8. Thus far, the aircraft has had a Mark 8 nose fitted and the wingtip photographic pods removed and replaced by standard tips, complete with working navigation lights. The main undercarriage bays have been stripped back to bright metal, corrosion checked and repaired, primed and repainted, as have the main wheels. Work continues to activate the hydraulic system by means of an electrically driven pump on the starboard engine and restore the cockpit canopy and its track to working condition. The English Electric Lightning was first conceived as a transonic research aircraft with the capability of being adapted as an all-weather interceptor. The English Electric P1, as it was then known, began as a design study under a contract awarded by the Ministry of Supply in August 1948. The study period extended over 1948 and into late 1949, leading to a contract to build 3 prototype P1A aircraft in April 1950. By early 1952, the Ministry was considering the design of a prototype fighter, which eventually would come to life as the P1B, for which a contract was awarded in August 1953 and a first flight in April 1957. The development flying with the P1As and the P1B went well, with the aircraft being named Lightning in October 1958. The first development batch of Lightnings were delivered to the RAF at Coltishall towards the end of 1959 for operational trials, before number 74 Squadron was formed on the new fighter in June 1960. Tasked as an all-weather fighter, the Lightning undertook the air defence role in the United Kingdom, intercepting Soviet bombers over the UK air defence zone from 1960 until its retirement in 1988. The aircraft also provided the air defence for NATO's 2nd Allied Tactical Air Force in Germany and performed the interceptor duties in Cyprus and Singapore. In December 1965, the British Aircraft Corporation was awarded a contract to supply Lightning F-53s to the Royal Saudi Air Force. Similar to the RAF's F Mark VI, the F-53 had a secondary ground attack capability for which it was given a strengthened wing. Our aircraft was one of the former Saudi aircraft, serialed 53675, which was delivered to Jeddah in September 1968 by Flight Lieutenant Anders. From Jeddah, 53675 was transferred to 2 Squadron at Riyadh for 2 years while the Saudis worked up on the type. 53675 was retired by the Saudis on the 1st of January 1986. ZF 581 was acquired by the Bentwaters Cold War Museum in 2011, with the cockpit section, fins, tailplanes, ventral tank and wing leading edge fuel tanks arriving at Bentwaters in early May, followed by the fuselage later in the month. Restoration work started in earnest in 2012 with the assembly of all of the component parts. The airframe was inspected before being stripped in part to bare metal, corrosion treated and in some cases having missing panels replaced. The interior of the fuselage, the cockpit and ejection seat have been completely refurbished and rewired to allow some of the instruments to function in an operationally light manner. New hydraulic pumps have also been fitted in the fuselage to allow the canopy and air brakes to operate. The aircraft is now ready for final spraying before going on display to represent an aircraft of number 74 Squadron when based in Singapore. Our CT-133 Mark III SilverStar was one of a batch of T-33 jet trainers built by the Canadair Company at their Montreal factory under the terms of the Mutual Aid Defence Programme to supply jet trainers to NATO countries. Based around the F-80 Shooting Star of Korean War fame, the aircraft featured a second seat behind that of the pilot with a consequent reduction in fuel capacity, which meant they were always flown with their wingtip tanks installed. Generally, they carried no armament when used in the training role, but were capable of mounting a pair of 0.5-inch machine guns in the nose. With nearly 7,000 of this type being built, the Lockheed T-33 was the most numerous and successful jet trainer in use by the Western powers. It was introduced to service with the United States Air Force in 1948, with many still being in service around the world more than 40 years later. Our aircraft, serial number 519252, was delivered to the French Air Force under the terms of the Mutual Aid Defence Programme in 1952. The aircraft was initially employed as a jet trainer to convert piston engine pilots to jet aircraft, and later as a lead-in fighter trainer to teach fighter tactics to trainee fighter pilots. It continued in the lead-in fighter role until 1997, when it was retired and returned to the United States Air Force for storage at RAF Sculthorpe by March 1978. Thereafter it was disposed of first to Hailsham and then to the Wealden Aviation Group, and finally to the Tangmere Aviation Museum by 1985, on loan by the National Museum of the United States Air Force. In July 2018, the loan was extended to the Bentwaters Cold War Museum, by which time 519252 was in much need of repair and restoration. Once reassembled at Bentwaters and towed into our hardened aircraft shelter, it was found to be suffering from corrosion, particularly in the main undercarriage bays and in the forward fuselage skinning. When unpacked, a number of panels around the aircraft were found to be damaged or corroded. These have now been repaired or replaced by our restoration team. Equally, the undercarriage bays have been stripped out and cleaned to bright metal before being corrosion treated and repainted in their original colours. When delivered to Bentwaters, the aircraft's Hispano-Suiza J-33 engine was separated from the fuselage and arrived on a stand for indoor display. However, due to a shortage of space, it was decided to reinstall the engine, a task that has now been completed. The large 190-gallon tip tanks have been restored and painted and will be fitted when the aircraft is rolled out of the shelter. The majority of the restoration work on the airframe is now completed, with current work being centred around the cleaning of the aircraft and the fitting of small components prior to it being painted in the colours of one of the units based here on Bentwaters Airfield. The Jaguar evolved from the somewhat protracted design and development of the Anglo-French advanced training aircraft that began in 1963, culminating in an agreement between the British Aircraft Corporation (BAC) and Dassault Breguet in 1965 to build a trainer with a secondary role as a tactical close air support aircraft. This was followed in 1967 by a radical change in emphasis through a memorandum of agreement for each country to build 2 examples of a tactical close support aircraft and deliver these by 1973. The first British Jaguar took to the air for the first time from BAC's factory at Warton in October 1969, followed by the first production aircraft for the RAF in September 1973. Our aircraft, XX741, came from the second batch of 50 aircraft and flew for the first time on the 4th of October 1974 before being delivered to number 226 Operational Conversion Unit at Lossiemouth. It then passed to number 54 Squadron at Coltishall and then to number 6 Squadron, also at Coltishall. Thereafter, the aircraft participated in the general routine of a UK-based close air support and interdictor squadron, flying in a number of military exercises, including Coltishall's annual tactical evaluation, the dreaded TACEVAL, where it played the part of the enemy in October 1982. It was also to be seen at the annual Battle of Britain Days, being flown to Bimbrook on the 22nd of September 1987 for display at their open day. The airframe was sold to Everett Aviation at Sproughton, where she was delivered by road on the 19th of November 2005. During August 2009, XX741 was purchased on behalf of the Bentwaters Aviation Society by one of its members, the late Brian Smee. From there on, the aircraft was more or less rebuilt to a ground taxiing standard by a team led by Al Vernon and is now run regularly for special events.